we're going to break down Starfleet Admirals into...
Yeah, it's the best five, worst five, know what I mean? Yeah, it's the best five, worst five tracks ever seen.
What does it mean to be a best or worst Starfleet Admiral? The criteria here are service to Starfleet above yourself, and generally upholding the principles of the United Federation of Planets. We won't be talking about major characters that become admirals later, like Kirk, Picard, or Janeway, but the top brass that affect our characters' missions over 1,000 years of Starfleet known history. Starting with fifth worst, Admiral Clancy. The Commander-in-Chief of Starfleet at the end of the 24th century is the embodiment of what's become wrong with the Federation. It's become too difficult with too many competing voices. It's difficult to see its core mission of seeking out new life when there's so much diversity of life already that it's starting to become bogged down in bureaucracy. While she doesn't seem to be in it for any personal gain, she doesn't have the conscience about it that some other admirals manage to retain while doing the unpleasant bits that the job requires. Number 4. Admiral Leighton. Leighton may be the best acted villain admiral in the franchise, but it never feels like he's doing what he's doing for his own personal gain. He's doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. He appears to be correct that the Federation is not prepared for a drawn-out war that affects many of its core worlds. While there have been border skirmishes with Cardassians and Kethi and others, the Federation hasn't known an all-out confrontation since the Klingon Wars over 100 years ago. While the fleet needed stricter security measures, you can't save paradise by turning it into the Confederation from Picard's second season. Number 3. Admiral Halftone. When Data creates his android daughter Lal, the Admiral with a background in cybernetics is sent to take her away from Data, despite everyone's wishes. This is one of the first times in TNG that a non-alien possessed Admiral is pictured as being completely heartless, until his very last scene after she basically dies. While his touching speech at the end shows he does have a smidge of his soul left, it's too little too late, compared to his bluster without trying to understand the situation in the slightest. While I'm sure he has his orders from higher up, he doesn't seem to show us Federation ideals at their best. Number 2. Admiral Cartwright. While the first time we saw him in the one with the whales, he seems like a competent fleet admiral doing what he can. His second appearance in the undiscovered country is what earns him his entry here. His plan to assassinate multiple Klingon chancellors is doing both the wrong thing and for the wrong reasons. Even Kirk, whose son was killed by Klingons and was just sentenced to a death mine by Klingons, comes around by the end of this and realizes that at some point you have to lay down your bat'leth and coexist. Cartwright's fall from top brass seems to pave the way for the more than half-century of easygoing expansion for the Federation with no major enemies. At least we got the wonderful Brock Peters back as Ben Sisko's dad. A dishonorable mention. While not quite an admiral, Commodore O is clearly one of the worst Starfleet top brass ever. How do you get to be head of Starfleet security as a Romulan spy? Nobody at any point in decades caught this woman's true identity. That's a failure at a lot of levels for the Federation heading into the 25th century. And the worst admiral in Trek history? Marcus. Only the Kelvin timeline could bring us a movie with Khan where you need a second villain that actually feels menacing, and his actions are for seemingly no good reason. He has other flag officers killed, he nearly destroys the Enterprise, and his motives of strength through turning the Federation into the Terran Empire just don't stack up to the amount of hostility we see in Star Trek Into Darkness. This is the third CNC fleet admiral to grace the bottom of this category. In an organization heralded as the benevolent good guys, how do these sometimes insidious people end up at the top of the command structure? And the best admirals. Number 5. Nechayev. I'm sure a few of you just went, what? Not her? Hear me out. Starfleet rolls out this admiral to let a command officer know they've got a mission they're not going to like, and it's going to involve the Cardassians. While she is stern and gets right to the point, she shows she has a conscience and is usually one step ahead of the command-level officers in getting those higher up to try and listen to reason. Not every mission in a military-like hierarchy is going to be pleasant, and the organization needs people like Nechayev that can both tell the hard truths and sleep at night knowing they've done all they can to give orders that uphold Federation principles to the best of their ability. Number 4. Admiral Paris. Tom Paris's dad, who takes his final form as Richard Hurd starting in Voyager's Pathfinder, seems to be an all-around square guy. I guess it's easier to come off as a nice admiral when you're in charge of communications projects on Earth. He's understanding of the officers under him, but willing to get tough if need be. One of the good ones in Starfleet's upper echelons. Number 3. Admiral Ross. As overall Frontlines military commander during the Dominion War, we get to see him more starting early in DS9's 6th season than almost any other admiral in the franchise. In a time of war, the scale of which the Federation has seemingly never seen, Admiral Ross is as Federation as he needs to be to achieve the objective of not losing to the Dominion. He's willing to bend the rules in a conflict where the other side is also playing dirty, but only to the extent that it's absolutely necessary. Number 2. Admiral Cornwell. Our primary point of contact with the top brass in the first 2 seasons of Discovery, Katrina Cornwell really starts to make up for some of the deficiencies we've seen in other portrayals of Starfleet admirals. She's not afraid to give you unpleasant orders, but as a former therapist, seems to be one of the most receptive and less rigid admirals when it comes to letting those under her get the job done with more flexibility. I can't see very many other admirals knowingly taking a torpedo to the face to save a ship. She went out like a badass. That brings us to the best admiral in Starfleet history, Admiral Vance. Whatever you might think about Discovery as far as quality of the series, they have gone a long way in not making admirals look foolish. Many admirals seem to come with only one setting as far as emotions conveyed by their respective characters. Charles Vance shows us a character that has more depth than any other on-screen portrayal. He's a family man that regrets not having enough time for his wife and daughter. He's seen the Federation near collapse and has a very suspicious nature when Discovery first jumps nearly 1,000 years into the future. As his character evolves, we see he becomes slightly more flexible and a generally happy fleet admiral. He has strong negotiating skills and is just a pleasure to watch in every episode he's in. Who's your favorite Starfleet admiral?